Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I thought that I would do a little bit of a classic book recommendations video talking about books that I would recommend to read during a rainy day. The reason for this is mainly that it's been raining all week and it's got me thinking about the kinds of books that I like to read during this time of weather and this time of season as well. Sort of the shift of autumn and slight winter hints in the air. And I think often I turn to something comforting, and of course comfort means very different things to different readers, but one of the books that I was reading this week really fitted with my idea of reading for a rainy day, and so I thought about other books that I would recommend for this sort of mood and thought that I would share them with you today. So the book that I was reading this week and got me thinking about this in the first place is Wintering, A Season with Geese by Stephen Rudd. This is a nature memoir, sort of. Stephen Rudd observes geese and talks about their migration patterns. He is living in Scotland with his partner and he is sort of thinking about the way that the weather is changing as the seasons progress. So this is capturing wintering, obviously, is capturing the late autumn months and into the winter, and sort of the way that the nature and landscape is changing around him, the way that it affects him as an individual. A lot of rainy days, a lot of grey and bleak days, but not cold enough so that it's snow, and not warm enough so that it's like a golden autumn. Most of the days are just this in between, and I think he captures that beautifully, and it sort of feels comforting in a way because he is slowing down and he's in a way appreciating that in itself. I've written actually a review of this that I'm really pleased with, so I will link that below if you're looking to read or if you're interested in this book and want to know more about it. The first few I have are more on the comforting side of things. So we have The Guest Cat by Takashi Hiraide, and this is translated by Eric Selland. This is a very short book about a couple and their interactions with a neighbor cat. So the cat is sort of moving around the neighborhood and visits several other inhabitants in the neighborhood. But it's about the cat's movement and its interactions and friendship or kinship with the humans around it. And in a lot of ways this is a sort of quiet rumination on the changing of the seasons. A lot of Japanese literature that fits into the slice of life kind of category is the kind of books that I tend to find very comforting. It's a slow-paced but also sort of admiring the slowness that allows you to be very aware of the world around you and to take note of the way that the trees, leaves are changing color, or the way that things are blooming or decaying, sort of just being much more present. I think that is something that is sort of fitting with a lot of Japanese literature in this genre, and this is an example, a beautiful example of that style. I think it also, the connection between the humans and the cat and the humans and the natural world, I think, is something that I find very comforting, and in general I tend to really enjoy reading about nature when it's a little bit dull outside. It's sort of a postcard of a reading experience, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's a really good one. Another one that I really enjoyed and that I think is beautiful and I wish more people knew about it is this one. I think the English title is The Bird Within Me, by Sara Lundberg, and this is a Swedish graphic novel. It's a fictionalized account of a real woman called Berta Hansson. She was a Swedish painter, and this is sort of a retelling of her growing up and becoming interested in art and wanting to do art, but not really getting that blessing from her parents or from her father. And so it's a book about acceptance and acceptance from yourself and being different and being yourself and from others as well. So it's a warm story and it's beautifully illustrated. I'll give you a few, like, obviously it has a nature theme again. I think there's something about this that I just find very familiar, and it might just be that it's a Swedish book and it's set in Sweden. A nice thing to just sit down with an evening, an hour or two to just sink into. And I think it's a beautiful story and beautifully illustrated, and the illustrations really tell the story. It's been translated into English, so I will link the English version below. The next one I wanted to recommend is more an author than a particular book, and that is A. Milne. So, the first thing that comes to mind for me with rainy weather is Winnie the Pooh. The rain song in the Winnie the Pooh movie is something that I tend to sing every single time that it's raining outside. So it is a very strong connection for me with rain and Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin wearing his raincoat and rubber boots. But I think in general I find A. Milne's writing to be so perfect for rainy days or grey days. There's a sort of humor to his writing in general. This is one of the ones that I love and that I wish was more read. It is Not That It Matters, and it is a essay collection. So for example, he has an essay about his library and how he enjoys the fact that he can walk around and things aren't really in order, but it's just sort of filled with surprises and with forgotten treasures. And I just love the way that he writes about writing and about books and about so many things. And I think his memoir is just as warm and charming and comforting for me as the Winnie the Pooh stories. I know that a few of his books have been sort of reprinted in the Pan Macmillan. They have like an imprint that is doing reprints of some of his books, I think. So this might be difficult to get a hold of, but I think his autobiography, It's Too Late Now, might be available, so I would definitely go check that out. The next book I wanted to recommend is the Nevermoor series. So we have the first book, The Trials of Morgan Crow, the second book, Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow, and then the third one that just came out is Hullpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow. So I wanted to specifically recommend these books on audio narrated by Gemma Whelan. I've read the first and second one in audio, and I absolutely love the audio narration by Gemma Whelan. I think her narration is probably the best I've ever come across, aside from Stephen Fry. Those two are my absolute favorite narrators of all of the ones that I've listened to so far. And I have actually listened to quite a lot, and a lot of them I enjoy as well, but these are sort of standouts for me. The Nevermoor series is sort of a fantastical, magical series about a young girl who finds out that she has magical powers. She's swept away into this magical land, and all kinds of shenanigans and mysteries ensue. So it's a typical fantasy middle grade story. There's nothing that original about it, but I think the way that it's told is just pure fun to read. And the magicalness, and there's quite a few like mysteries and darker themes to it, that makes it a perfect book to read in autumn and winter, I think. But as I said, the audio narration is just so good. So I've just got the third book in the audio lined up for me to listen to. So I'm just considering if I should just reread the first two before getting to the third one. Before the end of the year I will definitely be listening to the third one for sure. So the next one I want to recommend is a Swedish classic, and that is Dr. Glas by Hjalmar Söderberg. And the English is translated by Paul Britton Austin. It's basically about a doctor becomes entangled in some dark things, particularly related to a woman that is in an unhappy marriage, and she basically wants to get rid of her husband and tries to get the doctor to help her. So it's a lot about a lot of this book is sort of philosophical musings from the doctor and him thinking about his duty and thinking about sort of this woman and her relationship and how he could help her and if he should or shouldn't. So it's a lot of it is obviously him sort of battling with his morals. It's got this sort of dreary atmosphere, and the Doctor increasingly unsure about his role in all of this and if he is justified in his actions. It's almost sinister, and I think that is what I connected with sort of autumnal rainy day. And it is one of my favorite Swedish classics, so I would strongly recommend this one if you haven't got into it yet. I tend to be gravitating towards mysteries in this sort of weather if I'm not looking for something more comforting. And so of course I couldn't do a video like this without mentioning the Sherlock Holmes mysteries. I'm currently reading through all of the mysteries, so in the next few days I will be reading Valley of the Fear together with Amelia and Roxy. Obviously the Sherlock Holmes stories are set in London, and the weather there is sort of rainy on a regular basis. It's sort of dreary and dirty streets and a gothic atmosphere, and obviously a lot of crime and horrors around the corners within these mysteries, and and Sherlock and Watson sort of being inside in the front of an open fire, and there's that comfort in that sense, sort of being in their own safety and knowing that everything will turn out right in a mystery like this, but also the mystery itself is often very fun, and following their investigations. And I think in general Sherlock and Watson are just such fun characters to be sort of an escapism read, to just follow them wherever their mysteries lead them. Lastly, the one that I am currently reading also fits in with the mystery and the sort of fun atmosphere of a rainy day, and that is The Adventures of Maud West, Lady Detective by Susannah Stapleton. This is a non-fiction book about a real lady detective in the beginning of the 20th century. So I think she mainly worked in the 30s or 20s, 30s, 40s ish, and she Susannah Stapleton basically tries to figure out her who she was and her life, and sort of digs into the materials that she can find about her through journals and papers and things like that, and tries to figure out what parts of the articles that she's found are true, what parts of the stories are true. And it's a sort of investigative mystery, but with a non-fiction sense. It's just really fun to follow her experiment and of trying to solve this mystery of who this woman was. So that was all I wanted to say today. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you would like to read any of them. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me for books to read on a rainy day, so I can use those recommendations for the days to come, or weeks to come more like. I hope you're doing well, you're taking care of yourselves. I will talk to you soon.